Hominids, which have an important place in human evolution, began to differentiate from other primitive ape species in Africa about 5 to 7 million years ago. It is thought that different nutritional conditions were effective in this differentiation. Hominids, which were divided into two species, Australopithecus and Homo, played an important role in the progress of humans as a separate species. The Australopithecus species began to live in the Great Rift Valley of Africa about 4 million years ago. This species has survived by adapting to the changing climatic conditions of the world. Australopithecus, which became more carnivorous than other great ape species, entered an important stage in the transformation of man into a bipedal species when it erected its body and began to walk on two legs. After Australopithecus started to walk on two legs, it began to hunt various animals with its other two free hands. Australopithecus, which switched to a high-calorie diet with more hunting, also began to enlarge its brain. It is seen that the growth rate of the brain is directly proportional to high-calorie nutrition. Australopithecus adapted themselves to the new situation when they saw that the African forests began to decline. This new situation is characterized by arid and open savannas. Greater cooperation began to develop between this species, especially in small groups. Although Australopithecus learnt to walk on two legs, its speech and language abilities were similar to those of gorillas and chimpanzees. It is accepted that about 2.5 million years ago, a lineage split off from the Australopithecus species and gave rise to the Homo species. It is also thought that the Homo species emerged in a disconnected manner. The Homo species is thought to have given rise to the first verbal language. In other words, members of the Homo species communicated verbally with each other. The findings of the researchers prove that the oldest Homo species is Homo habilis. The habilis species, which emerged at a time when the African climate began to change again, had adapted to a drier and cooler climate. The habilis species had a higher brain capacity than the Australopithecus species and had longer arms and legs. While the brain capacity of the Australopithecus species was between 400 to 500 cc, the brain capacity of the habilis species was between 600 to 750 cc. Habilis species started to make simple tools such as stones and hammers and were the first creatures to control fire. With a larger brain, the habilis species obtained surplus food, enabling large groups of habilis to survive. When the skull of Homo habilis was analyzed, it was found that there was a protrusion in the Broca's area of the brain necessary for speech and sign language. Broca's area is the region of the brain that produces speech and sound. The detection of this region in the brain of habilis shows that this species has a primitive language. Habilis can be said to have neural pathways for language. Erectus, another important species of the Homo species, lived outside Africa, unlike the habilis species. The most important factor in the Erectus species traveling out of Africa was the acquisition of simple spoken language. With the ability of simple speech, they decided to migrate in groups and had a high level of social organization. Sapiens, like Erectus, is a Homo species that started to live outside Africa. According to a widespread view today, Homo erectus is the first hominid species to migrate outside Africa. Homo erectus is a species that pursues more prey. Since they carried out these hunts with axes, axes were found on their migration routes. In the 1890s, human bone fragments from 700,000 years ago were found on the Java island of Indonesia. From this human fossil, it was determined that a hominid species called Javan man lived in Southeast Asia. Following this discovery, the Homo erectus species was discovered with the researchers carried out. The emergence of Homo erectus indicates an important progress in the hominid species. Homo erectus is thought to have originated in Africa about 2 million years ago. During the interglacial period, Erectus followed herds of animals in African grasslands and became a carnivorous species over time. Homo erectus was different from other hominid species before it. Erectus was thinner, faster, taller and more intelligent. The brain capacity of the Erectus species, which became carnivorous, began to be larger than other hominid species. Erectus brain capacity is estimated to be between 800 1,000 cc. The fact that the Erectus species had a larger brain allowed this species to make inventions that did not exist in nature before. Erectus, which produced the first axe, turned into a species that adapted to nature with various tools and rich hunting. There are two fundamental questions about how spoken language emerged in the human species: how did words emerge and how did syntax emerge? Language universals seek answers to these two questions. Accordingly, language universals may have been involved in the first stage of language development in the hominid species. Oral language is recognized as the basic category of vocabulary in hominid species. According to experts, it is accepted that language control and hand control are closely linked in hominid species. Gestures have become an integral part of human oral language and facilitate the cerebral process in language ability. Gestures both inform and enable thinking. In this context, it is estimated that gestures enabled the development of human oral language at an early date. Neanderthals began to appear in the Middle Pleistocene about 300,000 years ago. It is recognized that the earliest Neanderthal species had many characteristics of the Erectus species. 180,000 years ago, an ice age in Europe caused pre-Neanderthals to migrate to the Middle East. After the end of the ice age in Europe, some Neanderthals returned to this continent. However, these Neanderthals had a different body structure from their ancestors who had previously lived in Europe and migrated to the Middle East. These Neanderthals were shorter, broad-chested and had strong arms and legs. They were able to adapt to the Ice Age of Europe by maintaining their body heat. Neanderthals hunted shellfish and various animals for food. The Neanderthals had a very sophisticated technology. They chipped flint and specialized in this work. It is known that the Neanderthals buried their dead and they attached importance to ornamentation. The Neanderthal species had a larger brain capacity than the brain of modern humans. However, it can be said that this species gave more importance to using muscle power instead of using brain power. It is understood that Neanderthals used a basic language close to modern humans. When a 60,000-year-old intact Neanderthal corpse is analyzed, the fact that it has the same bone structure as the modern human language proves this. This has led to theorizations that Neanderthals had a fast and fluent speech. It is accepted that 300,000 years ago or more, complex thought processes were made possible by complex sentences. As human language developed, so did thought processes. Accordingly, the human brain has also developed rapidly. The development in human language has also revealed a rapidly developing means of communication. This communication tool evolved from a primitive language in the Homo erectus species to a complex language in the Neanderthal species.